It's been a few years since OnePlus really annoyed me with their never settle slogan and lampooning Apple's dropping of my beloved 3.5mm audio jack. All good, but then their parent company, effectively Oppo at the time, handed them a design to rebadge that didn't include the jack, and so they settled, making up some marketing guff to cover. But I've forgiven them now, and I think I can approach this, the OnePlus 8 Pro, with fresh eyes and enthusiasm to judge it on its own merits, of which there are quite a few. It's certainly highly specified. In fact, it's safest to say that it's got everything you expect from a 2020 flagship except an always-on display, which is a shame. But as my iPhone 11 Pro shooting this very video also lacks an always-on display, it's hard to declare this a showstopper, as with that aforementioned 3.5mm audio jack. Apart from this, the OnePlus 8 Pro is almost the perfect modern smartphone in terms of a fast Snapdragon 865 processor, an excellent 6.8-inch 1440p AMOLED display, super colors, pin sharp up to 120Hz refresh rate, 8GB of RAM inside, 1 to 8GB of storage, dual SIM and 5G, though not millimeter wave unless you're in the USA on Verizon, a really good triple camera, of which more in a moment, and all for £800 or £900 if you want to push the boat out further on RAM to 12GB and storage to 256. Yes, it's still a lot of money, but set against Samsung's 2020 phones and recent flagship iPhones, somehow £800 doesn't seem totally crazy anymore. Certainly there's enough here to invest in a device that will last you well for 2 years in terms of major version Android upgrades, and I'll bet a couple more years as a viable hand-me-down, all covered by security updates from OnePlus. Now, OnePlus has at last also put in 3 things I love and which they've so far resisted in their lineups. So we finally get stereo speakers on OnePlus, not the best in the world in terms of components and resonance, but enhanced to decency with the always-on Dolby Atmos. And the resulting mix is eminently good enough when watching a little Netflix or YouTube over lunch, perhaps. Well done, OnePlus. They've also put in Qi wireless charging at long last. Now, they claim 30 watts wireless charging here, but that depends on a special charging stand with a fan, and that hadn't arrived in time for this review. But it charges just happily at 10 watts on my various standard Qi pads, and that's fine with me. Plus, there's reverse wireless charging for topping up Qi-compatible headphones, watches, accessories, even your friend's phone. Finally, OnePlus actually paid for the certification for full IP68 water and dust proofing. Hooray! No more worrying in the rain or the kitchen. The chipset used here is very fast, backed up by the newest RAM and UFS 3.0 flash storage, both cutting edge. The internals are as speedy as you get in the Android world, bar none. And all of this spec goodness is in a lovely matte finish, fingerprint resistant frosted glass body that's heavy at 200 grams, but eminently manageable. And the extended display and thin form that even my thumb and middle finger secure grip demo is a success. As with many modern smartphones, the fingerprint sensor is under the display for ease of access on a desk, and I'm guessing because a huge camera island on the back doesn't leave a lot of room for a sensor there. It's optical, no dodgy Samsung ultrasonics here, and once set up, it works just fine. First time, more or less every time. Okay, you do have to light the screen first with a tap or press the power button. You can't just put your thumb on the darkened display. This 2-stage operation takes an extra fraction of a second, but you get used to it in much the same way as I got used to the swipe up after Face ID on the iPhone shooting this. Note that I use the phrase once set up. Actually, enrolling a thumbprint on the OnePlus 8 Pro is tiresomely fiddly. You only get a limited number of impressions to fill up the fingerprint data, and if you don't do it efficiently enough, then you get an error message and have to start all over again. It took me 8 tries to get one thumb enrolled. Perhaps this is to ensure accuracy and improve security, or perhaps it's a bug. We'll see. The battery's large at 4,500 milliamp hours, and it means a day and a half of use per charge in my tests, not least because my 50-year-old eyes can't really tell the difference between 60Hz and 120Hz display modes, nor between 1080p and 1440p resolution, so I just left the 8 Pro on the former in each case and avoided a lot of extra battery drain. A 30-watt fast charger is supplied in the box with Type-C cable, and it's only an hour to fill the battery from scratch, and not much longer to do the same wirelessly. Very impressive. Also in the box is an excellent branded clear TPU case, making sure you can protect and grip your beautiful and expensive metal and glass sandwich. This also helps avoid unwanted touches on the Samsung-esque curved screen edges. Other reviewers have hated on this, but with a case on, this is a non-issue, and I didn't have a single erroneous touch input. Bringing us the highlight of many a smartphone, its imaging system. I'm not counting the gimmicky low-resolution depth sensor. Consider this a triple camera setup. I was pleased to see the depth of the camera island here, since it means that the underlying cameras have decent sensor sizes and optics, and you can see the results here. A 48 megapixel f/1.8 quad bare setup outputting at 12 megapixels with omnidirectional PDAF and laser autofocus and OIS. It's just about as good as main cameras get these days on phones, with an 8 megapixel, effectively 3 times telephoto, also optically stabilized, and another 48 megapixel quad bare sensor behind a wide angle lens. You cannot ask much more from a phone camera system in 2020, and I was overall very impressed by the results. The image processing is fashionably sharpened, but nowhere near to the same degree as on recent Samsungs. The OnePlus 8 Pro, in fact, rivals my iPhone 11 Pro shooting this for textures and genuine detail. But it's quite a bit cheaper, and you get the surprisingly good 3 times telephoto rather than 2. Subject for subject, in all light conditions, the OnePlus 8 Pro camera lives up to its price point and beyond. Low light shots are realistically handled, no hyperreal fake day effect, just a representation of reality without too many artifacts and without too much noise. There is a nightscape mode, but in all my testing the results were over-processed and not as good as the standard fully automatic capture, so just leave everything on auto and you're done. The OnePlus 8 Pro runs Oxygen OS, of course, OnePlus's take on Android 10, and it's splendid with just enough bells and whistles to be useful while avoiding outright bloat. Security is March 2020, and I'm sure will be kept within a month of the cutting edge. It's had 3 updates in the week I've had it. I loved all the extra display settings, not just screen refresh rate and resolution, but comfort tone like Apple's True Tone, Vibrant Color Effect Pro, similar to Samsung's Video Enhancer, motion graphics smoothing, upscaling content to higher screen refresh rates, and so on, various screen calibration presets. It's just a wonderful display setup. You could argue it's spoiled a little by a small cutout for the 16 megapixel selfie camera on the top left, but for most cases you absolutely never see this, especially with a dark theme applied. Almost everything has a dark title bar. By default everything's light themed, but in settings customization there's a nice nuanced dark theme, the one I'm using here, and there are a mountain of fingerprint and clock animations to pick from. Add in accent color options, icon packs, all out of the box, and there's an awful lot to fiddle with and make right. Now, I was expecting a high-end phone without character and to dismiss it as such. And what I got was exactly this, a high-end phone without character, except that it's so high that I can't dismiss it. The OnePlus 8 Pro blows past the need for character and charm. Think of it as a Formula One car. It doesn't need to stand out on style when it's so darned fast and capable. In fact, the only complaints I have about the OnePlus 8 Pro were in my introduction. If you can live without an always-on display, and if you're okay with the high but definitely not astronomical price, this is arguably the best Android phone in the world right now, the OnePlus 8 Pro.